Welcome back to the How to Get on Reality TV podcast. In this episode, we're going to talk about whether or not you should contact a casting director or associate that you've had previous contact with, or if that's plain creepy. In addition, we're going to talk about the new show format and how you can get involved and get your question answered. And we're going to end this episode with talking about a casting tryhard who finally made it on the show. All in this episode of the How to Get on Reality TV podcast. Welcome to the How to Get on Reality TV podcast with Dan Giesling, where I answer your reality TV casting questions once a week. All right, so big news, we're back. We're back on the podcast in a different format. This podcast is going to be posted to YouTube as well as iTunes moving forward. I wanted to change the format of the show, and bottom line, this is the second time we've been back. But, since we shut it down, or since I shut it down, I started to continue to get emails. So even though I shut the show down, I would still get emails and I'd respond to them. And over time, I guess I kind of forgot it, or I didn't always hold myself in regards that I'm kind of the ambassador for normal people getting cast on reality TV. And while I take a lot of pride in responding to people and helping them get cast on TV, I wanted to do something more. And, when the emails kept coming in, I said, you know what, actually with the, influence of watching another show on YouTube that I really like, I'm like, you know what, I want to do this and I want to make it more about you guys, meaning how can I directly help you right away and help as many of you guys as possible. And so I decided to change the format of the show from me dictating or me scripting out or me writing out an entire show to now making it about you answering your questions via voicemail. And I sent an email out to those of you guys that were on my email list and said, hey, look, this is what I'm thinking about doing. And then I'm just like, all right, we'll see what happens. And then the voicemail started to roll in. And it's a little bit different getting a voicemail about someone asking for help than an email. When I started to hear the voicemails of people asking for help and knowing that there's a real person behind that line of, it's not just a line of text anymore, it's a real person asking for help, that really fired me up and really, pushed me to want to continue with this show. So the show is going to be once a week, published on Mondays. And enough about the show format. I talked about people submitting voicemails. And so let's go ahead and listen to our first voicemail question from Michael.
Hey Dan, my name is Michael, and this will be my third year applying for Big Brother. Year one, I sent in a tape, and I went to an open call at Mohegan Sun, where I met a casting director. Last year, I sent in another tape, and was actually called back this time around by the same casting director. I feel like I probably shouldn't use his name, but I was reached out. His assistant actually reached out to me over the phone and kind of started the callback process, just for me to find out that I actually know his assistant because we had mutual friends when we both went to college in Washington, D.C. So this is my second year in a row, basically making an impression on this casting director. And now year 3 is coming up. I'm getting ready to make my video. I'm going to try to go to open call if I can. But my basic question is, at what level is it appropriate to reach out to this casting director and say, hey, I hope you remember me. We had a huge correspondence last year. You told me I was a really promising candidate. I would love to rekindle this relationship and hopefully be called back once again. If not, go right to finals. So my question is, should I wait till I make my video to reach out to this casting director on email? Should I call him at any point, just express my interest? He actually keeps showing up on my Facebook as someone I might know because of our mutual friends, and I know it's obviously inappropriate to friend him, but I just feel like all these signs are pointing me in the direction of communication, and I wanted your opinion. Thank you.
Hey, Michael, thanks so much for submitting the question. I appreciate you submitting it through the website, but let's go ahead and get to your question. So Michael's story, he's applied a bunch of times, been to open casting call. He sent in a tape, and he mentioned that he didn't mention the casting person's name, which is actually really smart. And for those of you guys in the future that want to submit questions, I would suggest not revealing a ton of information about yourself. You can even use a stage name, because ultimately I don't want the show to hurt you in your casting process. And the small chance that someone from a casting department, whether ABC, CBS, whatever, listens to the show. So just something to keep in mind for people asking in the future. And just also so you guys know, I don't know if you guys can see this, I've took notes on this, and this will actually be on the website after. But let's go ahead and get to his question. So he says that, what level is it appropriate to rekindle a relationship? Now, you got to be careful right away, because one of the first things is that you don't want to do when reaching out to a casting director or a casting associate that you might have met at an open casting call before, that you've exchanged emails with before. What you don't want to do is creep them out and be overly aggressive. Now, I'm not saying that you're going to be like that, Michael, but that's one overarching thing, because it seems like you had the wherewithal to say, hey, I'm not going to mention the person's name, and I want to even ask this question before I think about doing it. So that tells me, okay, your creepiness meter is on point. You don't want to ruin your chances by being too aggressive. And a lot of people have done that in the past. But so you want to approach your contact with this casting director or associate that you've known from the past very casually. So what do I mean by casually? What you want to do is you just want to write a single email. So whether it's a single short email. So you don't want to write your whole life story about every second of interaction you've had with them. Just introduce yourself and say, hey, I met you last year. I made it to semifinals, or I made it to finals, or wherever you met the person. One line about yourself. Oh, hey, I remember I was the guy who was an engineer that also, had a pig farm, or I was the girl who, worked in a, a clown factory. I don't know, whatever. One line. That's it. You don't want to inundate these people. You just want to give them a sentence to spark something that they're going to know, okay, yeah, I remember this person, or no, they don't. We're going to talk about that after, whether they recognize you or not. We're going to talk about the benefits of it. So that's how you want to do. You want to reach out very casually. The question, you had another question inside that. You said, hey, should I wait until I make my video to contact this person? And my answer to that is yes, wait until after you make your video, because chances are if they remember you, what they're going to want from you is another video. They're not going to want your video from last year. Chances are they're probably not going to say, hey, don't forget about semifinals, come right to finals. That's really rare. So they're going to say, yeah, hey, great, send another video. Well, what you don't want to happen is once they respond to you, essentially there's like a hot iron, right? They're like, okay, yeah, they may remember you, but at least they know that you're interested, or vice versa. So you don't want to spend a week wasting time to create a video. So imagine if they sent you that email and within 24 hours you respond to them with your video. They're going to be much more engaged than if you wait, 2 weeks, however long it's going to take you to shoot, edit, and cut your video. So yes, my answer to that is yeah, wait until after your video is done so you have it ready. And in the event that they say, oh no, I don't remember you, apply through the website, go ahead and do that so you're ready to go either way. The other thing you mentioned on there is you said that you saw this casting person keep popping up in your Facebook feed, and you took it as a sign, and that's cool. Maybe motivating you to get your stuff together. But I'm glad you didn't attempt to friend them or even send a message through Facebook, because depending on your relationship with that person, and really it's just a business relationship where they hold all the power, you don't want to seem overly needy or aggressive by friending them. And it may you may say, hey, Dan, is really friending someone on Facebook that aggressive? If you're really serious about casting, you don't want to do anything that's too pushy. And if you're friends with a casting director on Facebook, and you're not actually real friends, you probably may want to rethink what you're doing or your approach on how you're going about getting cast, because that's not going to help you. The fact that you're friends with a casting associate isn't really going to help you because you're not actually friends. But let's move forward. So bottom line, should you contact that person? Yes, you definitely should. Now, after you write that single email, very simply, one of two things are going to happen. Number one, that person's going to remember you and say, hey, yeah, I remember you. I liked your audition video. Sorry it didn't work out, but apply again, or I remember you. That's good. It's going to give you a little bit of an advantage, not a ton, but a little bit. So at least that person knows enough about you that maybe they can pitch you a little bit easier, where you're not starting from square one. So what's the flip side? What if they don't recognize you? Then what? It's not a big deal. Chances are, most of the time, casting associates are, I don't say most of the time, sometimes casting associates are shuffled around. They may be on different shows, they may be with different firms, whatever. So it's not that big of a deal. It shouldn't affect your desire to want to get on the show. If they remember you, great. If not, it's not that big of a deal and shouldn't affect how you approach things. So with that being said, Michael, I want to thank you so much for asking the question. If you want your question answered on the podcast, go to howtogetonrealitytv.net/ask, and there is a widget, everything. You can record it right on the site or from your phone. And Michael, as a small thank you, to you for asking a question, and anyone else that makes on the show, we're going to send you a free digital copy of my book, How a Normal Guy Got Cast on Reality TV. The other thing I do want to mention is that the notes from, I've taken when I hear Michael's question for the first time, they'll be available on the website, as well as an email that I actually wrote and reached out when I was going through the casting process. Same situation as Michael. So I will post both the show notes and a physical email that I wrote from a casting director that I had previous contact with, just so you guys can check that out. And you can check that out by going to howtogetonrealitytv.net/episode 15. Other good news, one of us, or I consider us, casting tryhard, someone that doesn't just get plucked out of a bar, or knows someone that gets them on the show because they're really good looking. A casting tryhard just got put on Survivor, and I actually had the chance to meet him. I spoke in his classroom in Northwestern's Max Dawson. I know he applied many times before. He even made it to the finals. And there was a discrepancy between who we knew on the show, who was going to be on the cast with him. So essentially, he made it to the finals and made it pretty far and never got on. So I, saw the cast was released, looked and saw his face, and that made me excited to see that there are still people who are tryhards that are really getting on the show. And if of course, I went to look at Max's, Twitter feed, and he's got a huge ego, and doesn't seem to be that way in person, but on social media is he's that way, and I'm sure that played into his role in getting cast. But I'm rooting for him because he's a normal person. He's a tryhard that's always wanted to be in the show, and I wanted to share that with you guys to let you know that it's not only Troy Zan or other people that have been trying to get on these shows for a long time. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, Troy Zan, you can listen to episodes of the podcast 3 through 15. It took him 10 years to get on the show. So I share that with you just to give you guys some insight that, people are doing this. It takes a long time. You guys, I'm not going to drive this point home, but you guys know it took me almost 4 years to get cast on. So don't give up. It's a long process. But that's good news about Max Dawson. Also, I want to let you guys know that there is going to be casting call information on the latest casting calls for various shows, not just CBS shows, on the website at howtogetonrealitytv.net/calls. And, that's it for this episode. I want to end each episode from now and moving forward by reading one of your iTunes reviews that you left for me in iTunes. And this one, I pulled up. This was actually from someone whose name is Just Before 6 o'clock. And I don't know why I don't want to say, I laughed. I don't know why I laughed. It was pretty funny, but they rated it 5 stars, and they say, pretty simply, didn't know this existed, but I'm happy about it. Well, I'm happy about you listening to the show, and thanks for leaving that 5-star review. And if you want to leave a review, you can go to howtogetonrealitytv.net/review. I appreciate it. And hey, maybe I'll read your funny review on the show. Thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm excited to be back once a week on Mondays. And don't forget, if you have a question, everything's at the website, howtogetonrealitytv.net. If you want to ask, it's at /ask. Thank you guys so much, and good luck on your casting journey.